Hello Summoners and welcome back to another episode of ProGuides Best Champion Domain, now on patch 12.2. The champions that we pick for this series are strong picks with high performance, but have low ban rates and are unlikely to get nerfed anytime soon. They are reliable picks for climbing and are worth investing your time in. We also have a series that covers the most broken, contested picks in each role, so make sure that you're subbed to the channel so you don't miss out when we post those as well. Let's just hop right into it. We'll be starting things out in the top lane with Mundo. Mundo's performance has gone up quite a bit over the past few months, enough so that Riot hit him with a nerf right before the new season began. But like most nerfs, it was a pretty small one, and overall did nothing to stop how strong of a pick he is. With his insane damage soaking capabilities, most people think that Mundo is a tank, but in reality, he's a juggernaut. He does a lot of damage and can very easily carry games just as hard as any bruiser would. And you won't have to wait a long time to come online. You can win most lanes over time with Cleaver Poke and go for all ins to start snowballing once you have your ultimate. If you're tired of being stuck in your current elo, the first step to climbing is fixing your champion pool. That's why we make these videos, so you can go ahead and find the right champ or champs for you. After you then decide on what you're going to play, you have to learn how to play it correctly. It can take many games to learn a new champion, but you don't have to spend days and weeks doing it alone. Our top tier coaches over at ProGuides.com can really help you figure out exactly what you need to work on. They're available 24/7, so it's never a bad time to come try one out. I promise, there's at least one that specializes in exactly what you're looking for. These guys have spent years reaching the top of the ladder, so why would you want to steal all their solo queue tips and tricks? And there's no better time now than to sign up, because we're running a pretty sweet deal. Just use the discount code WINTER when you check out for 20% off your sub. Now let's get back on topic, shall we? The second top laner that we have for you is Nasus. Nasus is commonly thought of as some ultra late game scaling champion due to his infinitely stacking Qs, but that's kind of a misconception. He actually spikes really hard in lane the second that you have his ultimate and Sheen. There really isn't a champion that wins an all-in against him at that point. Post lane, his big spike is around 2 or 3 items. Once you're there, you're usually able to run over fights. Just be sure that you're going to be running ghosts if you plan on 5v5ing a lot, since you're kind of prone to being kited in team fights. The last top laner that we have for you is Kayle. This is a champion that definitely is one of the more scaling oriented picks. Her first 5 levels are so pathetic that you can basically call it my love life. Even a Yuumi top lane would be able to bully you, but trust me, this pain is worth it, is what I always tell myself. Once you make it to the late game with Kayle, she's a disgustingly strong champion, able to melt through entire teams in seconds. To get there, farm as safely as you can using your E to get last hits. You'll never want to use your Q, since you'll inadvertently cleave down the wave and risk giving your opponent a freeze if you accidentally push a little bit too far. Once you're 6, it gets a lot easier, but don't try to trade too much until you're level 11 and have 2 items. Taking a look now at the jungle, the first champion that you should consider picking up is Rammus. He's a bit of a slower starter, but once you get rolling, he provides a ton of pressure with his pick-making capabilities. One major selling point for me is that Rammus doesn't really need his ultimate to make plays. All you need is his Q to run down an overextended foe. The second jungler that we have for you is Gwen. This one is pretty interesting, since Gwen in her native role as a top laner is currently one of the worst picks in the game. She loses to about every single champion in the top lane, and while she does have really good scaling for the late game, she doesn't really make it there. But in the jungle, things are a lot different. She has one of the fastest clears in the game with good AoE damage and healing that allows you to drag camps together and kill them all at the same time. Her ganks aren't spectacular, but they aren't the absolute worst. Post 6, she at least has some sticking power, so you can go ahead and definitely punish overextended lanes with ease. Our final jungler that we have to talk about today is Mordekaiser. This is definitely more of a bit of an off-meta pick and requires a different playstyle, but he's extremely fun. Mord has basically no gank potential whatsoever. Instead, you try to make your opponents come to you. When the enemy jungler tries to contest you, you'll very easily overpower them in an extended fight. Obviously, keep lane priority in mind, but as long as your laners aren't firmly planted, you shouldn't have any issues. Since your entire game plan relies on forcing the enemy to engage you in fights, you'll want to stay on top of dragon timers. That's the one time the enemy team is all but guaranteed to give you a fight that you want to take. But just remember to be careful when you use your ultimate. You won't be able to smite dragon once you're in the death realm. Now for the mid lane, the first champion that we have for you is Soul. His unorthodox playstyle makes him one of the most underplayed champions in the game. But for a few one tricks out there that do play him, they abuse the hell out of the average solo queue player's lack of awareness. Even though he's been in the game for several years now, and has always had the same playstyle, most people just somehow don't really expect the early ganks that he can dish out. You're able to use these roams to get your other lanes ahead, serving basically as a second jungler. And you aren't just doing it for your teammates. Aurelion Sol packs quite a punch himself in team fights. He may feel a little bit clunky to pilot, but once you get him down, landing a good RQ combo in a fight can really make the difference. Want a bit of an easier mid laner? Annie's a champion that literally anybody can play. Mechanically speaking, her kit is one of the simplest in the game. Get stunned up, go for a trade. Or later in the game, flash and face roll your keyboard to erase a squishy opponent. The only real weakness that Annie has is her lack of mobility, but you can make up for that to some extent by denying your enemy vision and forcing them to face check unsafe places. So be sure you pick up a sweeper and invest in some control wards. Like I said, Annie is an insanely easy champion. This would put her under the label of elo inflating champs in my opinion. But is she the easiest champion in the game? That brings us to today's question of the day. Who do you think is the #1 most elo inflating champion in League of Legends? Let us know your answers in the comments down below, and now without further ado, let's get back to the video. Our final mid lane pick is Gragas. Usually when you see Gragas in the top lane or jungle, he's either a tank or an AP bruiser, but when you play him mid, you'll be a mix between a burst mage and an assassin. You're going full glass cannon, so if you ever catch a squishy out, you'll be able to one-shot them with little to no counterplay on their end. He's also a really strong laner. Poke, sustain, wave clear all-in power at level 6, he has it all. Against most opponents, your goal is to whittle them down with your Qs until you get them low enough to go for a kill with your E-flash combo. Or if your opponent is playing way too passive for you to do anything against them, use that free lane to go for roams. Moving things down to the bot lane, the first carry that we have for you is Misfortune. The best build for Misfortune seems to change on a weekly basis, and the one that we have for you here this time is Dark Harvest and Lethality. The go-to mythic for a Lethality build is usually Eclipse, but Duskblade has really been performing well lately. Anyway, the biggest selling point for Misfortune in my eyes is how much of a bully she is in the laning phase and how easy it is to execute this pick. She has no losing matchups against other marksmen, and you're pretty much guaranteed to come out bot lane with the lead. The next pick for you that we have is Veigar. In my opinion, he's going to be one of the very best bot lane picks for this patch with the huge buffs that he's getting, but since he's a pretty rare pick, you'll be uncontested in the vast majority of your games. Veigar doesn't really have any downsides. Yes, he's a hyperscaling pick thanks to his passive, but he by no means has a weak early game. In fact, when paired with any other type of aggressive support, you can have constant kill pressure on any squishy lane opponent post level 6. Our final bot lane carry is yet another mage in Ziggs. The #1 thing that you always hear ADCs complain about is how reliant they are on their support in laning phase. Well, with Ziggs, you don't really need a competent support. He's the ultimate lane neutralizer. The second that you have Tier and Chapter, the concept of the 2v2 lane goes away. Just spam away to your heart's content. Outside of the laning phase, you'll have the same self-sufficiency. Your mines and satchel charge, along with your ability to deal damage from across the screen, means that you'll rarely, if ever, have to worry about opponents actually reaching you in teamfights. Now let's round out our list with our supports, starting with Soraka. If you're the type of support that likes to play for scaling, then this ambulance of support is probably the best pick for you. Her laning phase isn't too shabby either. As long as you can land Qs on your opponents, you provide both harass and infinite sustain for your carry. The meta build that most people go with is Guardian and W max, but personally I like to bring Airy and maxing Q, or at least putting 3 points in it. This gives you a lot more early game presence. The next pick that we have for you is Maokai. If you prefer playing a tanky engage type support, he's probably the best in his class, so he's the one that you should be locking in. Just kind of the same way that you're going to be locking down your opponents. I mean, some of the other guys in this category are fine, but they don't really have his consistency. It just doesn't really get any better than being able to flash root a high priority carry with a point and click ability. This forces people to pay the QSS tax against you or risk being the reason that their team lost the game when they got caught out right before an important late game team fight. Aside from his pick potential, Maokai also has his saplings. Even with a full tank build, these little guys hit like a truck when opponents face check them in a bush, but their damage is just a bonus. The real value that they give you is the infinite amounts of information that they can give you. They basically work as mini wards that also slow down your opponents as they try to venture down to get vision. Finishing off our list, we have Taliyah. There are plenty of other mage supports that are playable in the current meta, but most of them just win through slowly poking out enemies. Taliyah's Q allows you to do that too, but her main value comes from her ability to one-shot foes when you hit your full combo. This can take some practice to get down, but once you're good with her, you can hard carry any ADC through the laning phase. Having so much presence on her means that Taliyah can really just be played with any ADC pick, but she's especially good if you put her with Ashe or Jhin. Both of them are also really strong lane bullies, and they have CCs that can go ahead and set you up for some easy combos. And that's it for our top 3 champions to main on patch 12.2. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure you sub so you never miss out on our meta guides and you're always in the loop on what the best picks are. Remember, let us know what champion you think is the most elo inflating down in the comments below. Oh yeah, and one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below where you can go ahead and discuss League further or just hang out and be a part of the community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, you guys know the drill. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.